Winnipeg's magic number to the playoffs continues to winnow down to just 4 games with a big overtime victory against the Seattle Kraken. Find out who led the way on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Tonight's episode, we are chatting and recapping some big action from Seattle yesterday. Obviously, a huge overtime victory late in the evening, and the Jets are now shrinking their playoff clinching scenario to just 4 more wins. And as teams continue to drop games over the next couple of weeks, that number is going to shrink and shrink and shrink, and it feels increasingly likely that the Winnipeg Jets are going to be your Western Conference winners. Dallas dropping a decision in overtime gives the Jets a nice extra little bit of a cushion, an 11-point lead. Winnipeg already having won that first matchup a couple of days ago. They'll get to see them again, but really, it does feel like the Jets are starting to pull away from the rest of the pack at the exact time of the year that you can really cement your playoff seeding and your essentially your regular season legacy. So what a win. We'll chat about some of the specifics from this game and some really impressive stuff in just a little bit. But before we go any further, did want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Taking control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, like I said, this game was a big one, the Jets having won in overtime. It wasn't the best start, though. Like the Jets have occasionally had this year, this was a bit of a slower one at first. The first period, Seattle got up to an early 2-0 lead. The Jets really didn't quite look at the races. Hellebuyck actually got pulled, which is, I think, the first time. I think somebody said it was like the first time since 2019. So if that is true, what a great spot by that Jets fan, and really impressive. Also really just shows how consistent Hellebuyck has been, that even in his bad games, he really doesn't get pulled. The guy usually just sits through most of his lumps and really takes one for the team. So yeah, Hellebuyck, man, very rare that he ever gets substituted. But that seemed to send a bit of a message to the Jets to wake up. Helly wasn't really at fault. Winnipeg in front of him just didn't seem to be at the races. Comrie goes in. Comrie did give up a goal early on as well. But over time, the Jets started to really wake up. And I would say by the second period, Winnipeg really started to push back. And that's always a good sign. The Jets, when they start to really enforce their will and push opponents around and show that, this is a team that really is in first place for a reason, that's always good. It always gives the Jets a chance, and a 2-0 lead for Winnipeg really isn't insurmountable. Sure, you'd like that deficit to be a little bit smaller. You'd like them to just come out swinging to begin with, but as long as the Jets are within touching distance, they've always got a shot, and they have, I believe, led the league this year in come from behind wins. So very good to see. Obviously, that sort of grit and determination is something that has become a really big feature of this squad's identity. And, this year they're already up to 98 points and they've still got 14 games left. They have the potential to put together one of the biggest seasons in Jets history. Certainly one of the biggest finishes and best finishes in Jets regular season history. They are still very neck and neck with the Caps for a President's Trophy. Things are feeling pretty good. I will say, though, that this game in particular was really a story of the depth, right? Your top lines and top usual performers were a little more modest in this one. So guys like Cole Perfetti, Vlad Nemesnikov, even Morgan Barron really stepped up when maybe some of the guys like Scheifele and Velarde and, Ehlers really weren't at the races. I thought that they didn't have particularly great nights. Connor, though, I thought was good. KFC was a little unlucky, maybe had a couple of flubbed plays where he'd like maybe to take the shot, but he did score himself a great breakaway goal. And tied the game, and it wasn't really for a lack of trying. He was definitely on Winnipeg's top line, the best skater tonight, and I thought that he probably stood apart from a lot of the guys in the top six. Also, Cole Perfetti. Cole Perfetti, man, continues to be just an absolute machine for Winnipeg. I really feel like our faith in him has started to yield results. His forechecking has been a menace. Even when he gets pinned along the walls, he always tries to delay the play long enough for his line mates to make an assist or to get there to provide an outlet. He just wants to really frustrate opponents. And despite being perhaps not the biggest player, he plays a big man's game. He always goes in the corners. He's always making a mess of it along the walls, trying to force turnovers, and always providing some sort of support somehow, even if it's not a direct pass. And I continue to just really be impressed by his game around the net. Tonight, he opened the scoring for Winnipeg towards the, end of the first period, right before, intermission with a great goal. Samberg gets a nice shot. There's a bit of a rebound. And guess who's right there to cash in? It's Cole Perfetti. Cole has been relentless on the forecheck in my mind. And it's funny because he's not the fastest skater, but his brain and his work ethic have really just started to yield huge results this season. Really impressed with him. His 14th goal of the year. Also of note, Dylan Samberg's 11th assist. His offensive game, I think, is really taking a step forward as well. And it's just nice to see the roommates rekindle their old magic together. Stay tuned because they rekindled their magic again later this game, and we'll chat about that in a little bit. But yeah, for Winnipeg, I think this was just a really tough game at first, and then they started to grow into the evening. And from like the second period on, suddenly the usual Jets did show up. It wasn't a dominant effort, I would say, and Seattle probably had a few more looks than I think Winnipeg would really appreciate. The Jets shuffled a lot of the blue line pairings, at all times throughout the game. It felt like they struggled to find a lot of common threads that made them comfortable with how the blue line was performing. But I will say that, the recent addition of Luke Schenn had a pretty strong outing for the Jets. And I want to chat about how he and Tanev are fitting in overall in a little bit. But yeah, the Jets blue line, I think, was probably one of the shakier parts. Miller, Fleury, and DeMello all, I thought, had tough ones. It's not like you're going to have a perfect blue line every night, but yeah, they definitely had shakier games. I know DeMello's stat sheet might look a little cleaner, but I thought that he had a couple of moments where his lack of foot speed and stuff, and occasionally the passes into danger didn't quite pan out as well as he'd like. But otherwise, just a gritty, tough win. The Kraken apparently just always like to play it close against Winnipeg for some reason, and this wasn't going to be, like I thought, as easy of a win. I was expecting the Jets to kind of take the confidence from the Stars game and really go through Seattle pretty quickly, but that didn't happen. The Kraken used a lot of team speed and forechecking ability to pressure the Jets and forced, all the way into overtime, a big moment from Cole Perfetti and Dylan Samberg, uniting once again for Samberg to score the overtime winner. Yeah, a Samberg overtime winner. Bet you didn't have that on your bingo card either, because I certainly did not. That's the kind of game it took for the Jets to come away with 2 points. But you're not always going to have a Picasso. It's not always going to be pretty. We even saw our old friend Michael Eissemont score against Winnipeg. So, it was that kind of night, right? But hey, you come away with 2 points, you find a way to win. And at this time of the year, that's really the most important thing. And I think for the Jets, they continue to just get results. This is a really brutally tough part of the schedule. It's going to be very hard for Winnipeg to stay in this President's Trophy race when, the Caps have a much easier schedule. And yet here the Jets are continuing to plug away and come away with results. They'll get a couple more opportunities later this week to get even more results against Pacific Division teams, one of whom has been on and off scary in its timeline. But for the Jets, right now, they are still the hottest team in the league. Let's hope Winnipeg continues. But I did mention that I wanted to chat about a little more on Dylan Samberg. I think our man has started to really cement our faith in him and really show why he is one of the most important backbones of this whole roster. We'll get to that in just a brief moment. But before we go any further, did want to give you a shout about our friends and partners at Factor Meals. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. You can fuel your body without all of the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. Factor meals are always ready in about 2 minutes, and they come with great flavors like a Korean beef bowl and creamy Parmesan chicken. And they also offer smoothies, breakfast, snacks, so you can always have something nutritious ready to go. And of course, it takes away all of the time consuming prep, so you get your meals freshly delivered all the time each week. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use Factor Podcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping when you go to Factor Meals. Hey, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we are just following up some really big thoughts from a big Jets win against the Seattle Kraken with a really big performance from one of our bigger players, Dylan Samberg. Now, Samberg has been, one of these, I wouldn't say slow burns, but you could call him, I guess, a late bloomer in some ways in terms of his ascension to the top of this team. But behind Morrissey, he is really one of the most important spines on this whole roster. With our skaters and how they've been this year, I'd actually say that he might have the MVP skater award. That's a really tight award to give, especially when Kyle Connor has had a career season and, Josh Morrissey continues to just exist. Jomo is really a truly tremendous force on the ice, but Samberg has started to really put himself in the conversation as one of our top 2 or 3 most important players on this team. When he was out earlier this year for like a month and a half, this Jets team was not the same. The D pairings were completely scrambled. Pionk's partnership really relied on Samberg to keep him stable, and when Dylan was gone, that all went away. No one could help Pionk with some of the more chaotic moments that he has when he's under pressure. And so Samberg, obviously, for a lot of reasons we know, has been a tremendous shutdown force. But I think this year, we've really started to see him elevate his game to another level. Not only is he shutting down opponents defensively, but he's really ferrying the puck very aggressively. I think his confidence in control, especially dropping below the goal line, has increased, and he's jumping in and driving the offense more from the back end than he ever has at any point in his previous seasons. And now that his trust has really gone up with Arneal and Chenoweth, he's become a really critical part of all of this team's play. The only thing that he doesn't really do is the power play, but who cares, right? The power play, it's already fine without him. They need him more doing all of the even strength and PK work, and wow, has he been absolutely immense. In the game against Seattle, he was, in my mind, the Jets' best skater, and at least the fancy stats do back that, but I think when you just see how much more controlled his shifts are, how he constantly gets the puck up the ice, makes clean zone exits, and constantly keeps the team cycling, it really becomes apparent that this guy is, a tremendous part of this team, and I'm ready to throw whatever he wants at him. 8 years, $5.5 to $6 million, let's get it done. He is very clearly a franchise-level defender. He has become one of Winnipeg's most important players, and without him, this team just isn't the same kind of squad. I am curious to know what his actual dollar amount's going to be, just because, on the one hand, defensive defenders usually don't make that much. The points are always the thing that drives contract negotiations. In a much higher cap world, I don't know if that's going to hold true. It's hard to say with him, right? Because I think his overall impact on the team's actual offense is a lot more pronounced than maybe the stat scoreline shows. But again, points are a premium in this league, and that can really impact contract negotiations. So very curious to know what his cap hit's going to be, but all I can say is give him as many years as you possibly can. You want this guy to be a lifetime Jet. It's very clear that Samberg has taken that next step, and it's been trending that way for a couple of years now. Now he's just really ascended into a complete two-way defender, and wow, what a season it has been from him. Very clearly, somebody that the team can just rely on almost without question. His worst spells have really come when either the defense is hurt or he's just coming back and maybe shaking off some rust. Otherwise, he's really been steady Eddie, and you can't say that about a lot of players on this team. Even our best have gone through moments where maybe they've looked a little shaky, and for the most part, Samberg really hasn't had that. Again, barring a couple of stretches here and there that were maybe a little less under his control, he has been a guy that I think the Jets have just put so much more faith in, and he can really play a ton of roles for you, and really has just been eating up those minutes left and right. And it's great to see him to really become, basically Winnipeg's replacement for Bufflin, I would say. The Jets have been kind of looking for that top four overhaul for years. And, obviously internal development has been a little bit of a challenge. They don't like to really give their younger, smaller defensemen a lot of looks. And so for Samberg to really gain a lot of faith and really be one of Winnipeg's biggest minute munching defenders, only second to Morrissey and DeMello, I think just speaks volumes about how much the coaching staff really likes him. And he actually plays as many shifts as those guys do. He just maybe short shifts it a little bit more frequently. And, of course, Morrissey gets loads of power play time. So that's kind of a big discrepancy. But if Jomo was just playing even strength, I think Samberg would be pretty close to the same amount of ice time. So what a game from Dylan and what a season from him. He's up to, I think, like 16 or 17 points on the year. Oh, it's actually, I think, 15 right now. No, it is 17. It is 17 points. They haven't updated his scoreline from tonight's game, but yeah, man, what a year from him. And like the offense really isn't the most important thing, right? I only talk about that because I think it's just taken a bigger step forward this season. And if he'd actually been able to play the full year, it wouldn't have shocked me to see him hit closer to 30 points. That's really impressive for a guy who has predominantly been known for his shutdown ability. But, the way that he's carried the puck, the more that he's jumping into the rushes and really creating below the goal line and around the faceoff circles, just really impressive to see. I think that goal in overtime really showcases his growth and confidence and his ability to be such a versatile two-way defender. What a great moment of recognition from him when he saw, I will say Vlad did kind of throw a little bit of a pick on that overtime scenario, and it allowed Perfetti to drop below all three Kraken skaters, go towards the goal mouth, and Samberg was right there. And as soon as I saw Dylan sort of shade to that back end for the tap in, I'm like, oh, I think they've got it, right? Perfetti's not really going to miss this pass. Samberg, I have more confidence in finishing this year. And I'm just like, this is it, right? This is going to be the goal. It paid off. And wow, just a fantastic thing. And all I'm saying is like the Jets need to lock this dude up immediately. He is one of our most important skaters, really one of the biggest Jets draft successes of late. We don't graduate a lot of prospects to the NHL level, especially in big roles like this. Looking back, and seeing Samberg in his first draft year when he was just like a teenager, I do remember he had that like innocent farm boy sort of Midwestern naivete, and he had a real sweet personality, and his growth as a leader on the ice and in the room, and really assuming so much more responsibility from this team is just wonderful to see. Morrissey having another guy on this team that he can essentially defer to and really lean on, I think has just been fantastic. Morrissey has already been doing a good job on his own, but Samberg now stepping in and being that de facto number two right with him is just fantastic. I really hope that we hear an extension announcement soon, and I hope it's for like over 6 years. If it's less than that, I understand, with NHL contracts and stuff continuing to be a little bit of a challenge. Some players maybe want to, gamble on themselves a little bit if they think they can get a bigger raise at the end of a 4 to 5 year deal. But whatever it is, just get him locked up for term. I want him for the present and the future. This guy is awesome. He and Morrissey are going to be the spine of our team for years to come. And what an impressive year and a huge season from him, and just a tremendous, generational leap forward in his overall play. It's been so. With him in the future, I kind of wonder if at some point when Solomonsson's ready to take on NHL duty, if we see him become sort of that guy on the right side that plays in Pionk's stead. I do think the Jets are trying to extend Pionk, but I kind of wonder if maybe things haven't been going well in terms of the dollar in term, just because They brought in Schenn. They've already got Miller under term for another year, and I keep wondering what's going on with that. I thought the Pionk deal was going to be done sooner, and maybe it has been, and they're just waiting to announce it. But I usually don't think they withhold that kind of information. So I'm sort of wondering if maybe Pionk is going to start thinking about testing the market, which more power to him. I think he'll get a huge contract. I could easily see him making 7 million in free agency. I just feel like he's going to make a load of money, especially with teams always overpaying in free agency for blue liners. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think that at least in the meantime, locking up Samberg for now and the future is really critical. Give me your contract predictions for Dylan in the comments below or at my social medias at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Also, tell me what you think has been most impressive from Samberg as well. I currently think that his overall two-way play and the offensive ability that he has shown has really stood out to me, but maybe you have a different thing that's really impressed you with his game. So let me know what you want to talk about him, and maybe we'll spotlight it in a future episode. But I did also want to talk about our new additions and how they fit in a little bit more clarity, because I think Schenn in particular, between him and Tanev, has had a more outsized impact, and I don't just mean because he's quite literally big, but I think what he has done for this team through addition by subtraction has maybe helped this team a lot more than originally anticipated. But we'll chat about that in just a brief moment. Before we go any further, though, did want to let you know about our friends and partners at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Sure, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. And they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller for longer. Now, I'm somebody who actually likes the variety with shells. I know that some of you don't like that word, but maybe it's just me being a Marylander. We grew up eating crabs out here, cracking shells and all that, so having a little bit of extra work to get into that nice protein reward inside really isn't much of an ask. But they've also got no-shell varieties for you if you just want something that's super convenient. Obviously, these packs are easy to grab on the go, whether you need something for maybe an afternoon workout session or you want something in your midday office routine to help you break out of that 3 p.m. slump. Wonderful Pistachios is here to help, and they come with tons of great flavors, and they provide all 9 essential amino acids, giving you a full, complete protein. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. In the meantime, you also might want to hear about saving some money, and Monarch Money can help you figure out where all your money is going. We all know that everything, whether it's dining, online shopping, or entertainment, it's easy to lose track of all your expenses, and things are getting more and more expensive. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They can serve as your personal CFO, giving you visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money. You can also start building your wealth. If you are looking for an app that also allows you to help, if you've got maybe a spouse or a partner in your life, you can manage with your partner better than ever. It allows you to collaborate on tracked and shared personal accounts. You can set goals and stay on the same page without all of the stress. And of course, Monarch is just one app. They help you track your spending, plan long-term goals, and control your finances. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Hey friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode, as we're just wrapping up with some thoughts on new arrivals Luke Schenn and Brandon Tanev. So, yeah, I said that for me, the trade deadline was a relative disaster, and I do still think that given what the Jets were after, the outcome probably was pretty bad. But that said, I think Arniel has helped to soften some of the impact, because he's used Tanev and Schenn in ways that I think are maybe having outsized impacts thanks to who they're replacing. Tanev has come in for Kupari, and while I do think Kupari is a fun player and he's certainly a guy that can help the Jets in a depth role, Rasmus is a little limited, right? He's fast, and that's kind of it. In terms of the high level decision making and stuff, Rasmus hasn't really taken a big step forward. I think he's largely the same player that he's been. I just think that his use of speed and the way that he actually gets himself into better forechecking situations has paid dividends. So, not to really downplay his improvement and stuff. I just think Kupari sometimes is a little flashy on the surface, but it's more surface level improvement than it is stuff that's really leading to like a tremendous overhaul of his overall game. But again, I think he's a really serviceable depth player. I think he's played a really nice role for this team. I think Tanev kind of helps because it's moved Morgan back down to the middle, and Barron, since taking over at center, I think has looked a little better. Barron in this year I thought took a bit of a step back overall, but it feels like maybe he's found his game a bit over the past couple of months. He had a great no-look backhand pass to Connor against the Kraken that led to a breakaway goal. What a really ballsy feed, by the way, and a really impressive finish from Connor. But Tanev has kind of just been a bit of a wrecking ball. Sometimes I think he's a little less able to actually make plays the way that Kupari is, but in Arneal's system, Tanev maybe works a little bit better because he can just sort of be what I've always called him is kind of like a rocket propelled grenade launcher, right? Fire and forget in a direct line, right at your opponents. He's going to smash into things. Whether it really leads to anything productive is debatable at times, but just the pressure and speed that he can use, along with his surprising physicality, I think is maybe a nice fit for this fourth line. I think it's helped be a little bit more of a wrecking ball presence, and maybe that's what Winnipeg was really after, right? So obviously they didn't get Brock Nelson, and that does suck a lot. But Tanev can just sort of roll over opponents. And Luke Schenn, apologies to Luke, I almost just called him his brother's name. Luke has also kind of really stepped in and become this huge physical hulking presence who really makes safer plays and also randomly will just jump dudes. Like, the guy is an absolute freight train. And one thing I did kind of worry with him was, he does, have a pretty big reputation of taking a lot of penalties. So far, he hasn't taken any. So crossing fingers, knock on wood, that continues to be a trend. But he just absolutely trucks dudes. Again, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Byfuglien-y sort of physical presence. Definitely Byfuglien was more pronounced offensively. And between Stanley and Schenn, Stanley actually has bigger offensive jump. That is, something that's probably worth shouting out in Logan's favor. However, in almost everything else, whether it's defensive impact or use of the body, Schenn's going to win out here. And Luke also just has a lot more, experience. He's a cup winner. He's been, a guy who immediately seems to fit in this locker room. He's kind of got like that veteran old guard status, but he's understated about it, but has immediately become sort of a really respected voice in the room. And so, I feel like I was maybe underselling his impact when he got the trade call, and he's really come in here, and since he's also a bench Stanley, it has really calmed this Jets blue line down. And with Pionk looking to be week to week right now, Schenn has really anchored that second pairing with Samberg quite beautifully, and perhaps gives the Jets some thought about what they do with Pionk in the future, right? If Schenn continues to play this way for the Jets going forward, yes, you're going to lose some of that real offensive bite, but come playoff time, you strip out and reduce some of the chaotic decision making. And for me, that's honestly worth the exchange. I do like puck moving two-way blue liners, but in this particular case, given the Jets' composition and their roster, I think you will happily accept the swap if it means that Schenn continues to be not only a physical force, but also a guy who's made very safe, smart plays and hasn't thrown the puck into danger like some of our other blue liners. So really good on them. I think for what the Jets paid, maybe it's not going to end up so badly. It was still steep, relatively speaking, but it seems like Schenn might have actually been worth the cost of admission. Tanev, I think he's just a nice vibes guy, and really, if that's what he brings and helps the fourth line be an energy unit, you really don't care. That's fine. He's an old friend. He comes back and helps out the room. And so, hey, you know what? Schenn and Tanev, thanks for joining. And it seems like so far they have fit in quite nicely. Let's just hope that when it comes to playoff time, that their contributions and presence in the lineup really does help this team get further. We know that the Jets have had an amazing regular season. Now it's time to take that next step, and hopefully they can help contribute and push the Jets just a little bit further. But let me know your thoughts on both of them in the comments below or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. For tonight's episode, though, that's going to be all the time that we have. I thank you so much for listening and making us your first listen of the day every day. Tomorrow, we'll have a preview of Winnipeg versus Vancouver. And of course, recaps later, followed by Winnipeg versus Edmonton. We all love a good game against the Oilers. Let's hope it's a victory. But see you then. Have a great night, and go Jets go.